Actor Heath Ledger was found dead Tuesday afternoon at a downtown Manhattan residence.
Heath Ledger's sudden death in 2008 shocked the world, leaving fans, friends, and family reeling. But what if everything we think we know about his final days is incomplete? What if crucial details have been hidden from the public eye? As we unravel the untold story behind Heath's last moments, you're about to discover a side of his life that most have never seen. Stay tuned, because what we're about to uncover may change everything you thought you knew about the tragic end of his career. What most people don't know about Heath Ledger's sudden transformation. You think you know Heath Ledger, the handsome, charming, talented actor that took Hollywood by storm. But what if I told you there's a hidden truth about his final months that you've never been told? A transformation so sudden, so drastic, it left even his closest friends and family questioning what was really going on behind the scenes. In the months leading up to his death, Ledger seemed to unravel before the eyes of the world. We all remember the role of Joker in The Dark Knight, that haunting performance which won him a posthumous Oscar. What you may not know, though, is that such an intense, dark character wasn't just a method-acting choice, but reflective of a man who deeply struggled with his inner turmoil. Ledger wasn't that carefree, easy star who won hearts in 10 Things I Hate About You or Brokeback Mountain. By the end of his career, he had transformed not as an actor but as a person. What most people don't know, however, is that the transformation came with costs much higher than fame. In the meantime, Ledger drew back from the limelight. He called off public appearances, backed out of projects that had been lined up, and largely went into hiding from the blinding glamour of Hollywood. In a sense, he retreated into his cocoon. However, in doing this, it wasn't quite the image taken away from the actor. It was no longer the fun-loving, charismatic star, but one that, in his own words, was overcome with pressure and isolation. In the rush to celebrate his final performance, the media completely missed one thing in Ledger's life: how his rising fame had finally taken its toll on his mental and emotional well-being. Hollywood's demands, coupled with the weight of his roles, particularly the Joker, pushed Ledger to the very edge. This was no longer the actor who could slip into a role and then walk away unscathed. This dedication to such complex, emotive performances had really drained him, and he found himself numb and disconnected. Perhaps the bigger contributor, however, to Ledger's change was his personal life. By 2007, his much-publicized relationship with actress Michelle Williams had ended. This heartbreak had also reached a point where Ledger remained in limbo. But the tabloid frenzy over his personal struggles, with the pressure to be the next big thing in Hollywood, all combined into a perfect storm of anxiety, depression, and insomnia. What the media didn't report was how deep these struggles ran. Ledger was no longer just fighting against the expectations of the industry, he was fighting against himself. As a matter of fact, in the last few months of his life, Ledger had terrible insomnia, which forbade him from sleeping for days continuously. He was known to take a heavy dose of medication in order to sleep, adding to his decline. At this time, though the world was thrilled by his transformation in The Dark Knight, only a few knew the cost his body and mind were paying for such a performance. Of course, what most people never knew was that Ledger struggled with his mental health long before he was a household name. This is not a tale of some celebrity spiraling out of control, but one of a man desperately trying to hold on to something real while everything around him was wildly out of control. The final days of Heath Ledger weren't all about this career-changing performance as the Joker, but were full of a quiet desperation, an internal struggle that nobody truly saw until it was far too late. The transformation in question, his withdrawal, his struggle, his pain, had been in the making so much longer than anyone realized. Behind the closed doors of his apartment, a reality that was far from the image of the tortured artist often sensationalized in the media unfolded. The story was darker and far more personal, and one that would have remained concealed from the public for many years. So what were those pivotal moments that finally brought about such radical change? And how did Ledger's own personal demons continue to shape the man he was becoming? Stay tuned, as the answers to these questions will expose a side of Heath Ledger's final months that will make you question everything you thought you knew about his career and his life. What the media isn't telling you about the Joker's impact on Heath. All of us still remember the inimitable Heath Ledger as the Joker. It was electric, jarring, and mesmeric in a way that effortlessly bypassed performance boundaries. But imagine if this iconic performance was not a career-defining moment, but became a catalyst for something far worse. Playing the Joker was more than merely stepping into a character. It slowly began to consume Heath Ledger in ways nobody could have expected. This is the untold story behind Ledger's career-changing performance in The Dark Knight, one that the media has glossed over in favor of its tragic ending. While fans were in awe of his portrayal, few knew the dark toll it was taking on Ledger. The Joker wasn't just a role, it was an all-consuming obsession. Ledger himself admitted that he had trouble letting go of the character after filming. He said in interviews how mentally and emotionally draining it was to portray such a deranged and chaotic character as the Joker. But was it just the character, or was something more hidden beneath the surface? Playing the role of such a villainous character, who has so many complexities and intensities, does have a psychological price. Ledger didn't just act the part, he submerged himself fully into it. He locked himself in a hotel room for weeks, living in isolation to better understand the chaotic mindset of the Joker. What most people aren't aware of is that this sort of immersion completely muddled the actor and the role together. He began to be disassociated with reality and was unable to get out of the Joker's head. As a matter of fact, many say that Ledger's behavior grew darker while the role consumed him. Such was the media's interest in this, never quite followed up on how this role may have affected him off-screen. He indeed experienced insomnia, which worsened once he played the Joker role. His sleeplessness was not only with the vigor of his acting, but also the unending mental pressure it put him through. The role weighed heavily upon him, drawing him deeper into a state of depression and anxiety. What the world failed to know was how this emotional drain in life constantly kept him from normal functioning. Ledger's isolation wasn't about getting into character, it was a signal of something more alarming. The more he delved deeper into the psyche of the Joker, the more he had started to withdraw himself from family and friends by pushing them away. The people who were earlier his support system now found themselves on the other side of the glass. Why, then, does the media speak so much about the aftermath but not plunge deep into the struggles Ledger went through while filming the role? The Joker may have been his best contribution to the cinematic world, but it was also a personal downfall that the world would only see the tragic end of without truly comprehending the cost. Stay tuned. There is more in this story, more secrets about Ledger's final days kept from the public. The true impact of the Joker on his life was much deeper than you'd imagine, and it's about time the real truth about it is let out into the world. The hidden struggles Ledger faced in his final months. But what if Heath Ledger's struggles in his final months were much more profound than the public could have imagined? Media interest in his final movie, his iconic performance as the Joker, and the mere shock of his death masked so much that was happening on the quiet backstage fringes and struggled against such blows by his loved ones. Ledger's final months were not only the signature of his artistic triumph, but a full-scale physical and emotional decline that would eventually become insurmountable. There were warning signs aplenty, mostly ignored or set aside by the media. Insomnia had become his constant companion. He has given many interviews wherein he spoke candidly about sleeping not being easy. This condition, however, continually worsened until his death. Still, this was a little more than the occasional sleepless night. This was a chronic and serious condition that left him knackered and helpless. Given the nature of his performance as Joker and the strenuous schedule that was confronting him, it is usually assumed that stress from his role and his schedule ultimately led to his insomnia. But what the media failed to portray was that this problem ran deeper and further back than that. Ledger had been experiencing insomnia for a number of years now. The ravaging effects of not sleeping properly had already begun to reflect on him a long time before his last film. The pressure of having to maintain the character at all times, coupled with his inability to rest, had a very deep impact on his general health. Another of the numerous private torments Ledger was said to endure during those final months, along with insomnia, was the reported decline of his physical state. Friends said he was frail and exhausted, more withdrawn than ever. He had been known to drive himself to the brink via his troubled acting performances or in his personal fight, but in his last months, he seemed to break down both physically and emotionally. What the public did not know, however, was how much these personal battles took a heavy toll on his psyche. He had just recently been through a very rough breakup with actress Michelle Williams, mother of his daughter. The pain of their separation, mixed with pressures of fame and the hectic demands of his career, left him in a fragile mental state. Many times Ledger spoke about how he felt alienated, a feeling that was particularly worse for him during the months leading up to his tragic death. At the time, Ledger's loved ones fiercely guarded him. Family and friends chose not to publicly release the extent of his suffering during this period, keeping the full extent of his emotional and physical decline hidden from the public. They knew the pressures he was put under, but they also knew this would further feed the media frenzy that was already surrounding him. The truth was that more than insomnia and emotional struggles racked Ledger's final months. They were racked by an actor deeply tired, not just from career wear and tear, but from personal battles that the world had never really seen. But Ledger's death wasn't just the tragic end of an extremely promising career. It was the tragic end of a man who had been fighting battles nobody truly understood. Stay tuned, because in the following section we are going to unveil more on how those hidden struggles shaped Ledger's final days and how they were part of the larger story of his career. The dark truth behind Heath Ledger's last days. We all know the tragic story of Heath Ledger's passing, but have we ever truly understood the sequence of events that led to that fateful day? It was February 22, 2008, when the world lost one of its most talented actors. But while the headlines reported his death from an accidental overdose of prescription drugs, the full details of what really transpired in his final days are still shrouded in mystery. Ledger had been found dead in his New York apartment, surrounded by an alarming number of prescription medications. The immediate reaction from the media focused on the obvious: the overdose, the drugs, the chaos. But what wasn't immediately clear were the events leading up to this point. What had Ledger been going through in those final days? The portrayal of his death as a simple overdose missed the complexity of what was really happening. One of the key facts that wasn't immediately reported was how isolated Ledger had become. In the weeks before his death, he had distanced himself from nearly everyone in his life. His closest friends and family reported that he was not only struggling with his insomnia, but was also feeling disconnected from the world. His usual social circle, the people who could offer him comfort or guidance, were pushed away by his deepening depression and confusion. This isolation in his apartment, with only his thoughts and the mounting pressure of his career weighing on him, set the stage for his tragic end. Then there was the role that prescription drugs played in his death. While the media often pointed to the number of pills found in Ledger's apartment, they rarely explored the deeper issue of how these medications were prescribed. Ledger was reportedly trying to manage his crippling insomnia and depression through various medications. And while these were legitimate prescriptions, the combination created a dangerous cocktail. He was trying to find solace, but instead he was unknowingly setting himself on a path to danger. But the most haunting part of Ledger's last days was the tragic irony. He had spent so much of his life immersing himself in intense roles, pushing his body and mind to their limits to give audiences unforgettable performances. But in the end, he became trapped by the very thing he loved, his own mind. So what really happened in Ledger's final days? What was left untold by the media, and why was his death covered in such a simplistic light? The truth is far more complicated and deeply tragic than we've been led to believe. And the story of how a man so full of life became a victim of his own success and struggles is one that we have only begun to understand. What Heath's family knows about his final days that we'll never understand. We are, of course, all so painfully aware of the tragic story of Heath Ledger's death. But did we really know what sequence of events occurred leading to that fateful day? The world lost, on February 22, 2008, one of its most brilliant actors. However, though the headlines told it as an accidental overdose of prescription drugs, the complete details of what really happened during those final days remain largely a mystery. Ledger had been found dead in his New York apartment, surrounded by an alarming number of prescription medications. The knee media response was to latch on to the most superficial elements of the story. An overdose, drugs, chaos. What wasn't so immediately clear was what had been happening up until that point, what Ledger had been struggling with in the days leading up to his death. Such sensationalism around his death, a simple overdose skewed the true situation at play. One of the important facts that weren't reported at first was just how reclusive Ledger had become. He had, over the last few months of his life, drifted away from almost anyone who knew him. His closest friends and family mentioned that he wasn't only fighting his insomnia, but was feeling dislocated from the rest of the world. His growing depression and confusion had driven away an otherwise supportive and guiding social circle of people who usually surrounded him. Being alone in the apartment, with his thoughts and increasing career pressure pressing down on him, set the stage for his tragic ending. Of course, another important factor in his death was the prescription drugs. Though the media harped on about the number of pills in Ledger's apartment, rarely did they go into any detail regarding how these medications were prescribed to him. Ledger reportedly had been taking various medications to battle his crippling insomnia and depression. These were nonetheless valid prescriptions. The collection of these became a lethal cocktail. He sought consolation and was putting himself on a perilous path. But perhaps most haunting of all about Ledger's final days was the tragic irony at play. He had given so much of his life to burrowing into heavy roles, into physically and mentally demanding performances that would leave audiences floored. In the end, though, he had become trapped in the one thing he loved, the only thing he loved, and that was his own mind. But what really happened in Ledger's final days? What did the media not say? And why was his death portrayed in such black and white light? The reality is much more complex and tragically sad than what we have been led to believe. And how a man full of life became the victim of his own success and struggles is one story that we've only just started to understand. What we still don't know. The legacy of Heath Ledger. The life and career of Heath Ledger remain one of Hollywood's saddest yet timelessness coaching tales to this very day. Since his death in 2008 created a void in the industry, that did not stop the impact of his acting from being endless. While his posthumous Oscar win for his portrayal of the Joker in The Dark Knight has finally placed him among the greats of his generation, a great deal regarding his life, career, and unused potential remains a mystery. Before his sudden death, Ledger was already proving how versatile he was as an actor with films such as Brokeback Mountain, which got him into the international limelight with a string of nominations. But The Dark Knight was to be his defining performance, one that crystallized the public's memory of him. His transformation into the Joker wasn't just performance obsession, a performance that pushed him to emotional extremes. Many have indeed speculated that his immersion into the character, the darkness he explored, had taken a toll on his mental and emotional state. But could such depth and commitment to his craft have hinted at even more unspoken complexes? Still not known today is how far Ledger could have gone as an actor if he had not died at such a young age. He was in the prime of his career, and whispers of roles and projects he was about to take on would show even more of his incredible range. Which movies could he have remade? Which new characters would have appeared on the screens besides making the audience speechless? The thing is, Ledger really could manage to transcend the ordinary, and it is for sure he would have remade much more genres had he lived. His family has also always borne one secret, somehow concealed. While they have been open about their loss and love for him, what aspects of Heath's personal life and his vision did they keep to themselves? His sister Kate and his father Kim consistently portrayed a man so close to his family and tormented by the burdens of fame. But what did they think his potential in life truly was? What other sides of his personality did they love that the public never saw? Perhaps the most haunting thing about Ledger's legacy, though, is that we will never fully know how his life could have evolved, what influence he might have had on future generations of actors, or how Hollywood would have been shaped with him around. The passing leaves a lingering question of what was left unsaid, untold, and unseen in the life of an actor who seemed destined for even greater things. Ultimately, Heath Ledger is remembered and lives on, really, not just through his unforgettable performances, but through the ongoing conversation of what could have been. The silence of his death was replaced by the memory of deep, abiding respect. And as time continues to march forward, one thing remains undeniable. The world will never know in its entirety just how brilliant Heath Ledger was. Heath Ledger's legacy continues to evolve, but the truth about his life and death remains shrouded in mystery. What are the hidden pieces of his story that we're still left to uncover? Share your thoughts below, and let's discuss these revelations about his final days. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more untold stories and hidden truths about the stars you thought you knew. Stay tuned.